of years ago, Andrew and I spent the most perfect summer's day travelling up the Grand Union Canal on our friend's narrowboat with them. It was just one of those perfect days. And to get to our destination, we had to go through the Billsworth Canal Tunnel. It's the third longest tunnel in the UK, 9th in the world. And at its lowest point, or its deepest point, it's 143 feet below ground. It takes about 40 minutes to go through. As you leave the sunshine, you soon enter a very cold and dark and damp place. The contrast is, well, it's just completely one extreme from the other. You go from one extreme to the other. There is no natural light at some point because you can't see the entrance, you can't see the exit. There's no lighting through the tunnel. The only light is a tiny navigation light on the boat itself, but it gives no real light into the distance. Every now and again you hear the sound of rushing water, and what it is a ventilation shaft, and every so often throughout the tunnel there are ventilation shafts, and you hear the noise of the water dropping from seeping through the brickwork, and it gets louder. And if you're quick enough and look up, you see the sky. And the first time I saw it, it was quite a surprise, because the sun was still shining. The sun was all around the tunnel. But as we went through, we were obviously in complete darkness. And that reminded me of times in my life when I have felt as if I'm in a tunnel, a dark tunnel. And for me, 2 years ago, I was in that situation where I felt I was in a tunnel. I could see no light at the end of the tunnel, and things just seemed very black and very dark. And I remember one Sunday, wee small hours of Sunday morning, I just was awake and couldn't sleep. And I just felt hopeless and helpless and so miserable. And I really could not have a sense of God around me at all. I just felt abandoned. And in fact, I came to the conclusion in those hours that God didn't exist. And when I woke up the next morning after finally getting to sleep, it was Sunday morning, and I knew that I needed to get to church because I needed to speak with people, otherwise I would not have gone. As I drove in with Andrew, I was very quiet in the car. I couldn't say anything. I was just so miserable, and everything seemed so bleak. At some point near the creed, I threw out a prayer and said, God, if you are there, let me hear the word hope this morning in the service. It can be in a prayer, Tommy's sermon, Bible reading. I just want to hear the word hope. I got to church and sat down and looked at the order of service, and the readings and the hymns did not suggest that the word hope would be in those. And I sat and listened intently that morning to Tommy and everything that went on in the service, and I did not hear the word hope. Tommy got to the end of his sermon and started to announce the last hymn, and my heart just was really down, and it was like somebody whispering in my ear, there you go, I told you there'd be no hope. There's no hope. Tommy then started to announce the last hymn. And I heard him saying that as he had been praying for the service ahead that morning, that he felt God had told him to change the last hymn. So he'd rung Douglas with the new hymn and gave it to him. So we were going to sing a different hymn that was on the hymn sheet. And Tommy said, not only did he feel God wanted him to change the hymn, he felt it was for somebody particular in the church this morning. Well, you've probably guessed that the hymn he chose was "My hope is found in nothing less than Jesus and his righteousness." Well, my heart thumped and my heart soared, and I was so thankful that my God had given me that word hope in such a dramatic way. It wasn't just randomly out there. It was so obvious. And to this day, when Satan tempts me to despair, in the words of another hymn, and he often does, God whispers in my ear, "Sandra, I gave you hope." And that takes me back to that tunnel that I found myself in on that glorious sunny day. At that time, all was well with the world for me, really, but God had reminded me as we drove through that, and every time we went under one of those ventilation shafts, that the sun was still shining above, that in the dark times, when we do go through dark times, God still surrounds us. His light is around us, although we don't always see it. And I certainly had lost sight of it 2 years ago, but God revealed himself again to me. It was like going under one of those ventilation shafts. I looked up, and there he was. There's a wonderful part in that on that journey when you see the tiniest little speck of light at the end of the tunnel, and that is a glorious feeling when you do see the light at the end of the tunnel. But the light's always there. The hope is always there. It's just keeping looking up and clinging on to that hope that we have, that sure hope that Jesus is there with us and for us. I just want to finish really by reading from Psalm 62, just a few verses. "My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, and I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honour depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times." I know things are really strange at the moment. We are in uncharted waters, really, with the COVID crisis and all the unrest and everything that's going on in the world. And for many of you, I know that it will be a very, very difficult time. It may even be a very dark time. So I just want to encourage you to hang on to that hope that Jesus is all that we need, and he will be with us during these dark times. We have to look up and see him there. And so my prayer and my encouragement is to keep looking up, and there is light at the end of the tunnel.